Hey everybody, this is Sully. So I've recently become a proponent of these diatone 3-inch quadcopters, this being the GTR 349 HD Mark II that has the Caddx Turtle Mark II in it, and the ER 349 with the Runcam Micro Swift and the TBS Unify. And people were asking if the FPV feed on the Caddx was worthwhile. So then I thought, well, heck, why don't I just get out the latency? I can easily post a video of each. I can tell you straight off the bat, just spoiler alert, the micro Runcam Swift 2 with the TBS Unify is far, far better in the FPV field, but the Caddx holds its own. So I thought, well, I'm just going to set up here and do a simple latency test and then put up some demo videos. And we'll see. So see if it's something you can live with or if it's just utter crap. So I'll let you decide that. But then I thought I'll just bring out my Leader 120 with its all-in-one camera, see how latency is to compare with that. And then I just received this beautiful Runcam Phoenix Oscar edition. And I thought, that's going to go into my new 4-inch quad. And yeah, I thought I would just pop it in as well, see how that goes. And then I thought, you know, a couple of years ago, the X220 was a big thing, and everyone liked the 1166. Everyone but me, who ended up buying a generic camera that fits a 5-inch. So I'm going with one of the old style CMOS cameras. And I'm going to just see what latency's like on all of these. I will be posting at the very end demo video of what the Micro Swift is versus what the Caddx Turtle 2 is. So I did want to give a big shout out. TookitRC makes an amazing charger. This thing is great. It's 300 watts up to, and what it does for me right now, I have it simply going out to an XT60, which will be powering all of my quads. It's pretty easy to set up. You just select your power, go in here, select your voltage, and since I have a quad that's partially disassembled, I wanted to make sure I could do this as a smoke stopper, and I set it to 2 amps limited. So it will not pull more than 2 amps, and yeah, that's how I'm going to be powering up all of my quads today. So if you hear a little rumble in the background, it's just the fan from my power supply, which is looking for a home wiring wise, but it works very well. So yeah, I just want to give a shout out. This is an amazing little charger. If you do have this charger, please update your firmware. I'll have another video. I did a live stream on it. Trust me, this is a great charger, but you want new firmware. Otherwise, this is too touchy and charging's a pain. But with new firmware, beautiful machine. I love it. So we're starting off here with the Runcam Phoenix Oscar edition, and I ran this through a few times, looked at slow motion, which I'll put at the end here, and it seems like it's 0.07 seconds, 0.07, and that's a range of 0.06 to 0.13, but the average that I saw was 0.07. Next up's the X220 with a generic camera, and what I'm getting is somewhere between 0.05 and 0.07 seconds again. So jumping over to the Diatone GTR 349 with the Caddx. This one I'm just putting in slow motion because it surprised me by how quick it is. If you notice, the increments on the stopwatch go up in 0.07, and I'm going very slow motion here, and you'll notice that there are many times where they're at the exact same time, which means that the latency is actually between 0.03 and 0.04 seconds. Which is very, very good. And I was really surprised by this. I thought I was actually looking at the Micro Swift until I realized which quad I had in the camera. So yeah, this one, latency is not really the issue with the GTR 349. So now I'm jumping over to the Micro Swift 2, and I did it the same way. I like the slow motion idea better. And if you notice, there are many times where, once again, the clock lines up on both the FPV feed and on the stopwatch. And that generally would mean a 0.03, 0.04 second latency. I can tell you from flying these that latency is not the issue, and they're both very, very good quads. Yeah, it's not latency. I was actually expecting the numbers to be drastically different. I have one more to show, and this is the all-in-one camera with the Leader 120, and it's hilarious because it has the least latency, period, bar none. It's hilarious because if you look, the times match up about 90% of the time. So I'm going to say it's even less latency than the Runcam or the Caddx or even the generic. And that would actually make sense when you consider the camera is tied directly to the VTX. It was just a hilarious thing. I will need a thousandths of a second increment to do better than this. So I admit this is completely unscientific. I will totally accept that criticism, but I can tell you from flying all the quads, latency is not the issue here. But I'm going to jump over to an FPV feed and show you what the issues are. I'm starting off with the Caddx here, and my main issue with this, not the letterbox because I wanted that, that's actually a setting, so I can do that 4x3, but I like the letterbox so I can see wide, so I can see my yard, and make sure I'm not running into people. But my main issue with this camera is basically the lack of contrast, and I believe I have it on HDR settings, so some of this can be negated by the in-camera settings. But what my issue is actually that plastic lens. So every time the sun hits it, right there, you get massive glare. And the other issue is that it's just not that great of an image when you're flying FPV. Latency is not at all an issue. I've never wrecked this quad due to latency. I've wrecked it due to just changing transitions between shadow and bright with sun coming in, and I might not be able to see. And that's much different than latency. So I was very surprised. Good job to Caddx for keeping that stuff very low. As far as flight experience goes, it's great. It's fantastic. I love the ability to get HD footage, and I'm obviously having no problems at all flying around. I don't generally do that much proximity work, but the camera's not what's holding me back, other than just general image quality, lack of contrast, the normal stuff. That's not to say this is a bad camera, not by any means. It is definitely a usable FPV feed. I do enjoy the TBS Unify VTX more than anything, but as far as the camera goes, it's okay. It does have that glass, or I have the plastic lens, so it does get a lot more lens flare, which you're seeing right here, and that causes more issues than anything. This is actually the only camera I have that has that type of lens flare problem. And again, it's more a matter of knowing it and when you're flying than it is a matter of the camera being horrible or latency being a problem and why you're flying. So I'm going to jump over now to the micros. Actually, I'm going to do the all-in-one next. So here it comes. So here's the all-in-one camera, and it's actually on the same day, so the sun's still in the same position. And if you notice, whenever I do hit the blinding sunlight, it doesn't really cause as many lens flares, though it does cause some flashes. And I will say I like the picture out of this camera better than I do the Caddx. It's a little more usable for me, but I think I'm more accustomed to it. As far as latency goes, again, it's fast as heck. This was the fastest camera I have, at least in the tests that I did, which were unscientific, but still good enough to show if there was a latency problem. And yeah, again, this camera is perfectly usable. I love these all-in-one cameras. I like the wide field of view. That's about the only issue most people have with it's that super fisheye effect when you're flying around. It will make you dizzy and a little crazy if you're not used to it. So we're going to jump over to the Micro Swift. So I'm going to just start off, this is the Micro Swift, and I gotta tell you, just straight out the bat, if anyone were able to get me a 60 FPS DVR at 1080 with this camera, I would be the happiest person alive. This is phenomenal. This is what I want in an FPV camera. There are zero issues with it. It's wide enough field of view. It's contrasty. I can pick out the grass. There's no real sun glare. It does get a little overexposed with the harsh lighting conditions from this type of testing, which is really a worst case scenario. And the CCD, gives starbursts instead of big bright whiteouts. Personally, this camera by far, this would be the one. Actually, this is the one that's going in all my quads from now on, which is actually coming up with the Runcam. What's it called? The Runcam Oscar edition. That's one I'm about to test as soon as I can get my frame in. But all in all, this would be what I would call an ideal FPV feed, and all of the others are trying, just to emulate this. For Caddx to do as well as they've done, there's no knock on Caddx at all. It's a completely different setup than this type of camera. That being said, I love this one. I can fly the Caddx without a problem. Latency, obviously, not an issue. They're very similar times, and if 0.07 seconds isn't enough granularity for you, you are a very, 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 very precise flyer that I will likely never be, since I'm 40 and not 12 with the 12-year-old synapses. I cannot tell a difference. I will tell you straight out. It's not the latency that makes me different. It's the visual, just the visual effects. And this camera is by far visually the best, period. I can tell where grass is. I can tell where the stains in the driveway are. I can tell where the little branches are that I'm about to hit. And the sun doesn't black me out. And it's just a great freaking feed. Now, that wasn't the point of this test on which feed it was. It's just to point out, in FPV, if you want the HD quality, you are going to have to put up with a little bit worse of FPV feed. That's just how the nature of the beast. The way Caddx has theirs set up, they have minimized that time. I don't think in any type of true test you could measure, at least not a noticeable difference. You might get 0.02 to 0.03 millisecond or 0.03 seconds, but that's it. Like, if your flying is 0.02 seconds precise, you are just phenomenal. I don't even know if steel hits that. I truly don't. I'm not saying you won't use it. You might feel it. You truly might. I think that's more of a placebo, and I feel like any of these cameras would be in the hands of a pro, would be perfectly workable. Except that I do love this Runcam Swift image quality and the FPV far more than any of the others. That's it. So I'm going to just wrap it up here. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was not scientific, so please, if you have a better way of measuring latency, the only way I've heard of in the past is to do what I did with a stopwatch and just film both to see what's in the FPV feed and what's on the stopwatch. But other than that, I didn't notice an appreciable difference, 0.04 to 0.07. I have tested a camera that was 0.13 to 1.4 by my measurements, and that was the older HD Turbo. Oh man, what was that thing called? I don't know. It was a micro on camera. It was horrible. And it had a shoddy FPV field. It was basically the worst of every situation. And I ended up using it for 2 flights, and it's sitting my parts bin now. So I have flown some that have anything over 0.1 seconds. I believe you would notice. But as far as current crop of cameras, if you notice some and truly, truly have your flying affected by them, you are a phenomenal pilot. And that's all I got to say about that. And I'm not saying you're not anyway. I think a lot of people put too much emphasis on latency and camera latency. That's my personal opinion. Very personal opinion. I want to thank you so much if you hung in this far. Leave comments. If you have suggestions on how to do this better, I'll be more than happy to update. Thank you again. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Comments always appreciated. I like to answer anything I can. So thanks again, and we'll catch you next time.